What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. We have finally made it. The 2020 NFL season is upon us, right around the corner. You know what that means. We are back with our weekly NFL game picks, outright versus the spread, along with our locks of the week. If you guys enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe. Also, check us out online at alldaypigskin.com. If you guys want to get an exclusive breakdown in these game picks early, then subscribe for our newsletter and you will get just that. Also, you can go ahead and get exclusive fantasy advice from yours truly. All the details in the description. But for now, let's get right into it. Before getting into our matchups, I want to give you guys a quick word from our newest sponsor, Overlay Fantasy Sports, who take DFS to a whole nother level. And in particular, I want to highlight one of their newest functions, their matchup shop. Because if you guys are sick and tired, bored even, of picking between the same old Team A versus Team B spread or money line games, well, this is where the matchup shop comes into play, because it allows you on any given game day to pick between a bunch of different individual player matchups. So as you can see here, you've got a bunch of different options. You can go ahead and place a bet between Lamar Jackson or Russell Wilson. Who do you think will end up having more fantasy production this Sunday? And the spread comes into play here too. Don't worry, folks, because if you think that Russell Wilson will be within 6.5 fantasy points of Lamar Jackson, then go ahead and smash that buy button for Russell Wilson. But hey, maybe you don't like that individual player matchup. Don't worry, there's a bunch of different other ones with different spreads. So maybe you want to have a pick'em. Well, focus on Matthew Stafford versus Cam Newton potentially. And maybe you want to look at running back matchups. Don't worry. Overlay Fantasy Sports and the matchup shop has that as well. You can pick between Christian McCaffrey and Ezekiel Elliott. And if you guys want to go ahead and put in a parlay, Overlay Fantasy Sports allows you to do that as well. So get the most bang for your buck. And even though we talk NFL here, well, Overlay Fantasy Sports allows you to take advantage of their matchup shop in between a different number of sports, not only the NFL, golf, MLB, and also the NBA. So go ahead and do yourself a favor. Allow all that homework that you do on a weekly basis to not only benefit your fantasy team, but also benefit your wallet by checking out Overlay Fantasy Sports and their matchup shop. The Houston Texans at the Kansas City Chiefs kicks off this 2020 NFL season, but this was a game that we actually previewed earlier on in the week, so hopefully you were able to take advantage of that breakdown. But basically, to summarize, we knew that this would be a very high-scoring game. We urged you to look at taking the over-under on total points, and depending on the line that you got, that potentially did hit. But as far as matchups were concerned, we basically gave the Kansas City Chiefs the slight advantage because we knew what we were getting from their offensive weapons. Whereas with the Houston Texans, there were still some new pieces, some question marks in terms of health. You know, Brandon Cooks, David Johnson, that offensive line as well. And with the Kansas City Chiefs defense having really picked it up towards the end of the season, we just gave them an overall edge in this game. And obviously Patrick Mahomes, slight edge over Deshaun Watson. We went ahead and picked the Chiefs outright. So we did get that pick right. On the spread, we did take the Houston Texans because it was a pretty big number, almost double digits. Now, obviously, that didn't work out. The Kansas City Chiefs did cover, but it was pretty close. So we start out the year at 1-1. Our first game this Sunday is the Seattle Seahawks at the Atlanta Falcons, a game between two teams that should be top contenders in the NFC. And this could low-key be one of the top games this week. A lot of high scoring potential. And anytime you have got this Atlanta offense that we think will be a top 5 unit in 2020 and will rebound from last season where they dealt with a lot of injuries on the offensive line and also especially defensively, well, it's going to be a shootout. And on the other side, you've got Russell Wilson, one of the most clutch quarterbacks in the NFL, and he's got his old reliable targets around him. Chris Carson, Metcalf, Lockett, the newly added Greg Olsen is a nice veteran tight end, and we think there's going to be a lot of points here. Now, The Falcons should improve on the defense just because there's not as many injuries, but keep in mind, maybe some of these teams, especially defensively, a little bit rusty, no preseason. That's something to keep in mind. Also, the Falcons, normally this would be a great home field advantage for them, but with the situation being what it is in sports and with fan attendance and capacity not being at 100%, how much of that home field advantage can we really rely on here? That's something to think about. But as far as the breakdown here, offensively, we have to give the ever so slight edge to Seattle, and that's primarily because of Russell Wilson and what he can do as far as an escape artist and really deliver those clutch victories, because we think this game will be extremely competitive, probably pretty high scoring as well, and both teams will have a chance to win it late. Now, sure, the Falcons probably have more weapons surrounding Matt Ryan. They're going to pass the ball a bunch. If last season is any indication, you've got Julio Jones, you've got Calvin Ridley ready to break out, the newly added Hayden Hurst, a former first-round NFL pick at the tight end position, the newly added Todd Gurley on a prove-it deal for 1 year. That should be an upgrade over Devonta Freeman. So this should be an extremely great back and forth battle. But ultimately, we're looking at the quarterbacks and give the slight edge to Russell Wilson. Just a little bit higher on our scale of quarterbacks compared to Matt Ryan. But honestly, it wouldn't surprise us either way if the Falcons pull this off. So for that reason, we think this is a really good game to go ahead and hedge your bets on. Yes, we like the Seattle Seahawks outright when it comes to these close games, but on the spread, the Atlanta Falcons plus 1.5, so they are the underdogs here, but the bettors would agree with us in terms of this could be very well so a coin flip of a game. So for that reason, we're actually going to go with the Falcons on the spread. If Seattle wins, it will probably be by a very narrow margin. Next, we've got a divisional clash between the New York Jets at the Buffalo Bills, two teams that are trending in very opposite directions. The Bills, coming off a playoff appearance, look to improve on that in 2020, while the New York Jets will probably be one of the worst teams in the NFL this year. They've got Sam Darnold, yes, but he hasn't progressed quite as quickly as many have hoped. They've got an offensive line that has a lot of question marks, and as far as big name players, yes, they've got Le'Veon Bell, but he's probably past his prime. And then Jamison Crowder, pretty consistent and reliable, but outside of that, who do you have? While the Buffalo Bills, man, they've got a Josh Allen that continues to improve every single season. He's a dual threat quarterback, so he's tough to game plan for. They just added Stephon Diggs, a big name wide receiver. They've got a good offensive line and established rushing attack with Singletary, with Zach Moss, the rookie, and they've got a great defense on top of that. The point being, we really like the Buffalo Bills here. This should be one of the simpler picks to go ahead and predict. It might not be all that high octane just because of the game plan in terms of the Bills liking to rush the football and then play good defense, while Sam Darnold and the Jets don't quite have the capability to put up a bunch of points. At least that's what we believe at this point in time. So you might not get all that many points scored here, but we like the Bills to go ahead and get this victory to kind of pull away late as the game progresses. We like them outright on the spread, -6.5, and we think the Bills can go ahead and cover that as well. Win by right around 7 to 10 points as the game goes late. Maybe force Darnold into several turnovers and then capitalize on that via some field goals, via some touchdowns. Either way, we like the Bills outright and on the spread. Next up, we've got an NFC North clash between the Chicago Bears at the Detroit Lions. And a big storyline here was who would be the starting quarterback for the Bears. And obviously, at this point in time, we know the answer. It was, just like we predicted, Mitchell Trubisky. And nobody should really be surprised by that because it makes sense. Trubisky will get one last chance to prove that he can be the guy and potentially save some jobs in the building for Chicago. Now, currently, we predict that he probably gets a 5 to 6 week run and then Foles takes over. But maybe you're a Bears fan that's not all that excited that Trubisky is starting versus a divisional opponent in the Detroit Lions. Well, actually, good news there. Trubisky, if there's one team that he looks like a somewhat decent quarterback against, it's the Lions. Last year, he had two of his highest passer rating performances versus the Detroit an awful defense. Now, it has improved, however, via free agency and the NFL draft. And they're actually favored in this game at -1.5. And probably a big reason why is because last year, when the Lions lost to Chicago, they were without Matthew Stafford in both contests. Now back healthy, he adds a completely different dimension to this offense. It's a viable pass-heavy offense. Let's not forget, Stafford has thrown for over 5,000 yards passing before in his career. He's got good weapons in Golladay, in Jones, in TJ Hawkinson, in the newly added DeAndre Swift. Kerryon Johnson's still there. So that'll be something to keep an eye out for. But make no mistake about it, this game will come down to that great Chicago Bears defense versus Matthew Stafford. Because Trubisky here versus probably a lower ranked defense in the Detroit Lions, all he has to do is be a game manager, exactly what he's capable of doing. The Bears won't ask him to do all that much. How big of a factor David Montgomery will be due to his groin injury, also probably not all that important. Trubisky will go ahead and, I believe, return to some of his rushing that we saw, make him a little bit of a bigger threat from a couple years ago. And then Allen Robinson and Tariq Cohen, it'll be that plan offensively. And right now, I'm actually leaning towards the Chicago Bears. I think the defense can go ahead and stifle Matthew Stafford for a good portion of this game. And then I'm just not quite sure that the defense of the Lions can go ahead and contain that Bears offense, even though I don't really have all that much faith in them. I think they can go ahead and break out and eventually wear down that Detroit unit. For that reason, I think that the Bears barely get a win here. I'm not all that confident in it. I will go ahead and say that. I don't like picking the Bears just because I have zero faith in Mitchell Trubisky. But if there was a game for them to win, it would be versus the Lions here. It's a good matchup for them. The Bears are still a top 5 unit defensively, and they will force some turnovers, get to Matthew Stafford as well. I anticipate a lower scoring game here with both teams having a chance to win. Lions are favored at -1.5, but I'm going with the Bears defense. I'm taking them outright and on the spread. Moving on, we have got the Cleveland Browns at the Baltimore Ravens, another divisional clash, and many people probably here are just going ahead, picking the Ravens and moving on. But we're here to tell you, don't sleep on the Browns. That's not to say that we're going to pick them to win this game. No, but this will be closer than people expect. It's a divisional clash. These two teams know each other very well. Yes, the Ravens have reigning MVP Lamar Jackson, and he's a big reason why we give the edge offensively to the Ravens because of what he can do as a rusher, and the fact that he's the ultimate X factor. Making people game plan for him is incredibly tough, but we do expect that offensive efficiency that we saw from the Ravens last year to kind of go ahead and decrease, come back down to earth a little bit. And on the flip side, the Browns, they're much improved here, folks. A new head coaching staff with a much improved offensive line that will open things up for the rushing attack, give more time to Baker Mayfield. And he's got some of the best weapons in the entire NFL. He's definitely got better weapons than what Lamar Jackson has to work with. Odell, Jarvis Landry, Chubb, Hunt, Austin Hooper, David Njoku. It's a long list, and they've also got a capable defense. Now, ultimately, it'll probably come down to Baker Mayfield versus Lamar Jackson, and there we give the edge to Lamar Jackson. But we think this game will be much closer than people expect. The Browns can hang in there, and for what it's worth, they actually split this series last season. Some people might forget that, and I believe that at a spread of -8.5, where the Ravens are favored by over a touchdown, going the Browns on the spread is actually a pretty smart bet here. The first game of the year, both these teams will be a little bit rusty, and for that reason, I like the Browns on the spread, but I'll still go ahead and go with the safe pick outright in the Baltimore Ravens there. Next up, we have got the Green Bay Packers at the Minnesota Vikings, divisional clash in the NFC North, and these will be your two favorites to win that division. Last year, the Packers swept the Minnesota Vikings, and honestly, we think they come out here with another victory, whereas the public disagrees. The Vikings favored at -3.5, but we ask the question, what has changed all that much compared to when these two teams faced each other in 2019? If you look at it, the Vikings have lost Stephon Diggs, and who's going to step up and replace him? Justin Jefferson, the rookie that they got in the first round, he's getting off to a slower start per sources in camp, and probably all rookies will be off to a slower start than usual with no preseason. Yes, they've still got Adam Thielen, who will be healthy, and they've got a great Dalvin Cook. But, I mean, on the other side, the Packers have got Devontae Adams, who will also be healthy. Aaron Jones, who had his breakout campaign, along with many other capable running backs. And they've got Aaron Rodgers. Now, sure, Rodgers probably didn't play up to his potential in 2019. But if it comes down to Rodgers versus Kirk Cousins, we still give the edge to Aaron Rodgers. Yes, that Minnesota Vikings defense is great. It has improved, but don't sleep on the Packers defense. You saw last year that they were a unit that was incredibly improved on that side of the football, and we think they can go ahead and hold their own versus this Minnesota offense. This should be a game that's very close. Both teams should have a chance to win it, but ultimately, in a game that comes down to Rodgers versus Kirk Cousins, we still like Aaron Rodgers. He's got plenty of weapons with Adams, with all those running backs, and some other wide receivers on the outside that we hope should improve, guys like Lazard, MVS. The point being, barely in an eke-out victory, we like the Green Bay Packers here to go ahead and win this game. On the spread, like we mentioned, the Vikings are at -3.5 favorites, so for that reason, we're going Green Bay on the spread as well. Next up, we've got the Indianapolis Colts at the Jacksonville Jaguars. And honestly, there shouldn't be all that much to break down here because this should be pretty cut and dry. The Colts, after adding Phillip Rivers in the offseason, now return to being one of the favorites in the NFC. And even though he's older, Rivers still had over 4,500 passing yards last season. Now combine that with one of the best offensive lines in the entire NFL, a very stable rushing attack, and weapons like T.Y. Hilton and Jack Doyle. And this is a great opportunity for Phillip Rivers. On the flip side, you've got the Jacksonville Jaguars, who probably will be the worst team in the NFL this season. Are they tanking for Trevor Lawrence? I'm not sure, but what you can't ignore is that they continue to lose or trade away pieces offensively, established guys. Leonard Fournette no longer there. Now, pretty much offensively, all you've got is Gardner Minshew, who had some nice moments, but he's probably not the answer long term. And then DJ Chark. Defensively, they've still got a lot of holes, and the Indianapolis Colts, on their side of the football defensively, are actually a young and up-and-coming team that some people are sleeping on, and I think can go ahead and dominate this game. In fact, I wouldn't be shocked to see the Colts resting their starters by some point in the fourth quarter. I think this will be a game where Rivers does some nice things, but ultimately it'll be the rushing attack that takes care of business versus the Jaguars. They're not going to need to the Colts air out the football here. I don't think it should be all that close. I would be shocked if the Jaguars keep this game back and forth close. The Colts should pull away by the third, fourth quarter. I like them to win outright on the spread, +7.5. The Jaguars are underdogs, but with good reason. I think the Colts can win by close to double-digit points, so I will take them on the spread as well. Moving on, we have got the Las Vegas Raiders at the Carolina Panthers. And maybe more so than any other game this week, this might be the toughest to predict. And primarily so because of the Carolina Panthers, because their spectrum of results this season as far as record is concerned could be anywhere from one of the worst teams in the NFL all the way to an 8-8 season. The reason for that, they've got a new head coach in Matt Rule from Baylor previously. You have gotten rid of Cam Newton, now the Teddy Bridgewater show. The offensive line has lost pieces. Yes, McCaffrey and DJ Moore still there, but no more Greg Olsen. And then defensively, don't even get us started. This is a completely different team defensively. And the biggest piece that's missing, obviously, is Luke Kuechly following his off-season retirement. So it's really hard to predict any single game with the Carolina Panthers in the early portion of this season. Now, as far as the Raiders are concerned, yes, they are more experienced. They've got a quarterback that, in my opinion, is better than Teddy Bridgewater in Derek Carr. Weapons offensively, that's tough to say. We actually think that the Panthers might have some more versatile weapons due to what Christian McCaffrey can do and because of all the rookie wide receivers that the Raiders will be relying on. But hey, they've still got a Darren Waller and they've still got Josh Jacobs, a top 10 running back. Defensively, The Raiders have some nice pieces, but they also had moments last season where they were blown out. So again, we actually think that this will be a game that could potentially be pretty high scoring and pretty entertaining when it's all said and done, back and forth with both teams having a chance to win. Now, for all of you Teddy Bridgewater truthers out there, I don't want to go ahead and squash your dreams, but just know that this Carolina offense and team in general is very different to what the New Orleans Saints had around Teddy Bridgewater when he went undefeated, filling in for Drew Brees. So I don't necessarily think we're going to see the same Teddy Bridgewater from last year. And that's yet another reason why I have to go with the Las Vegas Raiders, at least outright here. On the spread, it's practically a pick'em plus 1.5 for the Carolina Panthers, so they are underdogs. But just again, going back to what the Panthers could potentially be if everything falls into place, I'm going to hedge my bets here. I think the Panthers are a tough team to predict here, and if you guys want to stay away from them and their matchups in the early portion of the season, I completely understand that, but I will hedge my bets here and take the Panthers on the spread because it wouldn't shock me one bit if they go ahead and pull off this victory when it's all said and done. Next, we go to the Miami Dolphins at the New England Patriots, a contest that probably a couple years ago up until now was a slam dunk pick for New England. But guess what? 2020 is a different beast. Tom Brady no longer a part of the New England Patriots, something that we never thought we would say. Now is the Cam Newton era, and like we all knew he would, he wins out the starting quarterback job. But if you're saying, well, at least the Patriots can go ahead and rely on their defense, actually, there wasn't a team that was hit harder defensively due to COVID-19 opt-outs than the New England Patriots. They lost numerous key pieces on this defense. And offensively, Cam Newton, outside of Julian Edelman and James White, it's tough to see who he can rely on. Yes, he's still an X factor that people have to prepare for because of what he can do with his legs, and ultimately is why we think that the New England Patriots will win this game. But don't sleep on the Miami Dolphins here. Yes, they've got Tua in the wing ready to take over for Ryan Fitzpatrick, but to start off the season, it will be Fitzpatrick under center, and he did some nice things for the Dolphins last year. They've got some nice pieces there in Preston Williams, Devontae Parker, who lit it up towards the end of 2019, Mike Gesicki, and guys like a Jordan Howard and a Matt Breida. They've gotten a little bit better on the offensive line via the draft. Same with the defense. The point being is we think that Ryan Fitzpatrick can keep the Dolphins in this game as it progresses. I don't think it should be a blowout for the Patriots. And honestly, Cam, probably with a new team, with a new system, considering how late he joined the Patriots to begin with, is going to have his hands full. He's probably going to have to rely on his pure athletic talent to get the job done here, at least in the early portions of the season for New England, but against an opponent like the Miami Dolphins, who are preparing the future for Tua, and right now more so just having that bridge quarterback in Ryan Fitzpatrick, we think the Patriots can get it done, but the Dolphins should keep it close. Either way, we like the Patriots outright, but the spread almost at a touchdown, we believe that's a little bit too high, -6.5 for the Patriots. For that reason, we are actually going with the Miami Dolphins on the spread. Next, we've got another divisional clash, this time between the Philadelphia Eagles at the Washington Football Team. The Eagles are a team that on paper is better, especially offensively, than Washington. It starts at the quarterback spot, and honestly, that's all you need to know. This is Carson Wentz versus Dwayne Haskins. Yes, Haskins won the quarterback competition in Washington, but we're still not all that impressed from him. What we saw from Haskins late last year, sure, he had some okay performances, but that was versus some bottom-of-the-barrel defenses and a point in time in the season where records were already cemented, playoff spots were cemented, and teams weren't playing for all that much. The point being is offensively, we're taking Carson Wentz and the Eagles 10 out of 10 times. So at least as far as going outright, we like Philadelphia here. Yes, Washington has nice pieces with Terry McLaurin and potentially Antonio Gibson, who's got some comps to a Christian McCaffrey, but there's still a lot of room for improvement, especially on that offensive line that has also lost Trent Williams. Keep that in mind. But the saving grace here potentially could be that Washington defense, which is a very underrated unit. Philadelphia dealing with some injuries on the wide receiver position. But again, they've still got Miles Sanders. They've still got Deshaun Jackson, Zach Ertz, Jalen Reagor, Dallas Goedert. So even though the spread at plus 6.5 we think is a little bit too high and wouldn't fault you one bit if you went with Washington on the spread, we got to go ahead and give the edge to the Eagles there as well. Maybe Washington goes ahead and with that great defense keeps this game a little bit closer than it should be for the first 3 quarters, but we think the Eagles can go ahead, wear them down, and kind of pull away towards the 4th quarter. So give us the Eagles outright and on the spread. Continuing on, we have got the LA Chargers at the Cincinnati Bengals. And if there's a game that you're looking to circle the underdog where they can pull off the upset, we think this is the most likely scenario for week 1. And yes, the Bengals are coming off the worst record in the NFL, but guess what? They will automatically have more stability with the addition of Joe Burrow. They've also got a healthy AJ Green. They have got Tyler Boyd. And they've got Joe Mixon, a top 10 running back, a healthier returning offensive line as well. And they're facing a Chargers team that is one of the biggest question marks in the NFL. And obviously the reason for that is the departure of Philip Rivers. What does this team now look like with Tyrod Taylor at the helm? And we do believe that Taylor will own the starting quarterback position for the majority of the season unless the wheels completely fall off. But that's a story for another time. But the point being is, offensively, the Chargers have all the playmakers in the world. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Hunter Henry, Austin Eckler with no more Melvin Gordon in there. Showed us he could carry the load last season. But all those player ceilings are now lower because Tyrod Taylor just doesn't have that same ability that a Philip Rivers would. So for that reason, this game should be a lot closer than maybe some people expect. On the flip side, the Chargers do have a great defense, and ultimately, we believe that's what will be the difference maker. Because right now, we're predicting that this game goes towards the end of the 4th quarter with both teams having a chance to win. And if the Bengals do happen to find themselves down, this veteran defense should go ahead and be able to get at least a couple of stops versus Joe Burrow, the rookie quarterback who's at a huge disadvantage that there was no preseason this year. Will probably get a slower start than expected. The point being is at least outright, we like the Chargers. However, on the spread, like we said at the beginning, don't be shocked if the Bengals pull this game off. And right now at plus 3.5 in terms of a spread, especially with the Chargers usually winning kind of close, we think the Bengals are a great pick on the spread. It wouldn't shock us if they win outright, but on the spread, we absolutely love them there. Moving on to an NFC South divisional clash, we have got the Tampa Bay Bucks at the New Orleans Saints, and this is the game we are the most excited for. And it obviously starts with the addition of Tom Brady in Tampa Bay. And man, we get to see Brady versus Breeze 2 times this year. That will be great. Get your popcorn ready. This should be by far the highest scoring affair this week. Both these teams are absolutely loaded. Brady has never had a better group of offensive playmakers than he does right now. The Bucks have Chris Godwin. They've got Mike Evans. They've got a plethora of tight ends with Gronk, O.J. Howard, and Cameron Brate. An improved offensive line. And oh yeah, they just added Leonard Fournette on top of that. They've also got a very good rush defense as well. But on the flip side, Drew Brees back healthy. Alvin Kamara back healthy. Michael Thomas, the best wide receiver in the NFL. You added Emmanuel Sanders as well. A great offensive line. A good defense. And boy, this has all the makings of a classic. More than likely, this will be a series that will be split. So for that reason, we will go with the home team here. Not that it really matters who the home team is at this point in time, but we're going to give the edge to the Saints primarily because this is a team that has more experience playing together. And maybe this early in the season with Tom Brady still new to the Bucks, it could be a factor. But again, it wouldn't shock us if the Bucks pull this game off. We think it'll be decided late and it'll be extremely high scoring to, again, go ahead and highlight that. But right now, we're going to go with the Saints outright. However, on the spread at minus 3.5, the Saints are favored. We will go with the Bucks there. If there is an upset here with the Bucks winning, which could be very likely, that covers that situation. And if the Saints do win, we don't think it will be a blowout. So again, that's why we like the Bucs on the spread here. Next, we have got the Arizona Cardinals at the San Francisco 49ers, another divisional clash. And honestly here, we're a little bit surprised that the 49ers are favored by so much. They're minus 7.5 point favorites. But if you remember last year, the Cardinals actually played the 49ers very close both times they matched up. And now the Cardinals have gotten a lot better. Kyler Murray will improve in his second season. One of the favorites to have that type of big quarterback breakout like a Mahomes and or Lamar Jackson. And then obviously you've got the big, maybe the biggest offseason addition of DeAndre Hopkins. That is absolutely insane. Kenyon Drake now the featured running back. No more David Johnson. The offensive line has gotten a little bit better. You still got Christian Kirk, Larry Fitzgerald. Yes, the defense is a question mark for the Cardinals. And that's why you saw last time these two teams played that they were high-scoring affairs. But on the flip side, the 49ers, they've got a great defense. Offensively, they've got Jimmy Garoppolo. He's, an average to an above average quarterback. But the game plan for the 49ers is to run the football and play great defense. Tevin Coleman, Raheem Mostert, Jerick McKinnon, they've got potentially Deebo Samuel with a chance to play in this game. That would be huge, but either way, we think if he does suit up, he will be limited here. It should be the George Kittle show for San Francisco early on in the season. And while we do like the 49ers, we think defensively they can go ahead and hang in there, and that Garoppolo, along with a great head coach in Shanahan, can put the offense in opportunities to succeed versus this Arizona defense. So they should have the edge there to potentially eke out a victory. But overall, this spread at minus 7.5, that's a little bit too high in our eyes. Like we said, the Cardinals should be one of the most improved teams this year. A top 10 offense, as far as I'm concerned. They have top talent at every single level, from running back to wide receiver to quarterback. So on the spread at minus 7.5, that's a number that's a little bit too high for me. I will take the Cardinals there. On Sunday night, we have got the Dallas Cowboys at the LA Rams. The Cowboys, is there an offense that has more pieces than what they have? They are absolutely spoiled at wide receiver. Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, and the newly added CeeDee Lamb. Blake Jarwin, now without Jason Witten there, will have all the opportunities to be the guy. A great offensive line. Oh yeah, and we probably forgot the most important thing, Ezekiel Elliott, a top 5 running back in the NFL. Dak Prescott is a guy that broke out last season, almost 5,000 passing yards, really took that next big step. Defensively, the Cowboys can go ahead and do a vanishing act from time to time. I think that's why this is a game where the spread isn't higher. Right now, only plus 2.5 for the LA Rams. I do agree with that. I believe that the Rams should be underdogs. And this is a team offensively that's without some key pieces. Todd Gurley, no longer there. Brendan Cooks no longer there. It'll be the Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp show. The offensive line still has question marks, and we saw that Jared Goff, maybe the Rams were a little bit too quick to give him all that money. So this will probably be a pass-heavy type of game from LA. But favorably, what should keep them in this contest is that great defense. Guys like Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey, studs at multiple levels here that can go ahead and potentially rattle the Cowboys a little bit. But when it's all said and done, I just have more faith in this Cowboys offense than I do that of the LA Rams. I will take the Cowboys to win this game outright. And on the spread, only plus 2.5, not all that high. The Cowboys, if it comes down to it, they've got an upgraded kicker with Greg Zuerlein, the former LA Ram. So if it comes down to that and they win by 3, again, they would cover on the spread there as well. So outright and on the spread, give us the Dallas Cowboys. Getting to Monday night, our first game features the Pittsburgh Steelers at the New York Giants. And this is a game that it should actually be pretty interesting, but as far as who we like, well, we're going to go with the more experienced and balanced team, and that is the Pittsburgh Steelers. But let's break down why. Now, yes, the Steelers were extremely disappointing last year, but that has everything to do with Big Ben going down in week 2. Yes, there were some other injuries in Juju Smith and James Conner, but again, as soon as Big Ben went down, that season pretty much a throwaway for the Steelers. But with Big Ben healthy, James Conner, Juju Smith healthy, a great offensive line, This will be an offense that's on a completely different level. Big Ben in 2018, when he was healthy, led the entire NFL in passing yards. This is a defense that took a huge step forward last season, will be a top 5 unit on paper. And they are going on the road playing the Giants, who offensively, they've got a lot of pieces, a little bit underrated. Daniel Jones, a guy that looked like he had some nice moments his rookie season, should improve on that his sophomore year. And around him, Sterling Shepard, Golden Tate, Slayton, Evan Ingram, and then also Saquon Barkley, a top 3 running back in the NFL. But the offensive line still has some issues defensively. Again, the team a little bit inconsistent, and maybe the Giants do keep this game close for the first 2-3 quarters, but then eventually we're going to go with the team with the more experienced quarterback, with the team with the much better defense that will probably force Daniel Jones into several mistakes and go ahead and set themselves up to go ahead and separate a little bit. So for that reason, we like the Steelers to win outright, distance themselves as the game goes, and cover the spread, which is only plus 3.5. So give us Pittsburgh on the spread as well. Getting to our final Monday night game, we have got the Tennessee Titans at the Denver Broncos. And somewhat surprisingly, at least in my opinion, the Broncos are actually favored in this game. And I'm not saying that the Broncos can't win, because both these teams can go ahead and be very up and down. But just looking at last season, the Titans coming off a good playoff run. The Broncos not all that impressive. And when you look at the two teams, both teams want to do similar things. They want to be run first with game managing quarterbacks and play good defense. So this will likely be a low scoring affair, which is why the Broncos could very well be in it and win the contest. But look, the Broncos are still a team with one of the worst offensive lines in the entire NFL. They have a defense that has progressively gotten worse and worse every year, losing some big pieces. You still got Von Miller and Chubb there, who are great. But the Titans, no slouches on defense either. And the Broncos right now, they are so reliant offensively on what Drew Lock will be. He had some nice moments his rookie season, but he's still, for the most part, a big question mark. What can we expect from him? They've got good weapons around him. Gordon, Lindsey, Courtland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, Noah Fant. But again, Drew Lock versus Ryan Tannehill, I will take Ryan Tannehill there. And I'm not the biggest Ryan Tannehill supporter. I think he got overpaid by the Tennessee Titans. And I do believe the Titans will take a step down this season, potentially could miss the playoffs. But still, the Titans have a great offensive line. They've got good weapons as well. Jonnu Smith, A.J. Brown, Derrick Henry. So for that reason, I'm going to go with the Titans to win an ugly, close game here. No, it wouldn't shock me if the Broncos get the victory, but I'm going to go with the Titans, who are actually the underdog here. So I like the Titans outright and on the spread. Moving on to our locks of the week, let's start with the New York Jets at the Buffalo Bills. And like I said before, these are two teams that are trending in completely opposite directions. Give me the Bills with that established offensive plan and great defense to take care of the lonely Jets. Just not enough pieces for the Jets. Poor offensive line. Still probably going to be one of the worst teams in that division. Next, going to the Indianapolis Colts at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Similar situation here. The Jaguars probably the worst team in the NFL, while the Colts with Phillip Rivers should be one of the favorites in the AFC. Great weapons offensively, great weapons defensively. This could be a blowout by the time the fourth quarter comes. And finally, Philadelphia at Washington. Give me the Eagles here. I think Dwayne Haskins still has a lot to prove before I can trust him as that starting quarterback. Wentz 10 out of 10 times over Dwayne Haskins. Ultimately, that's what this will come down to, and we're keeping it at that at this point early on in the season. Week 1, no preseason. We don't want to push our luck with these locks, so we're going to go with the most surefire ones: the Bills, the Colts, and then the Philadelphia Eagles. So with that, we conclude this week 1 breakdown. And as always, let us hear it in the comment section. Did you agree, disagree, along with any other questions you guys might have, fantasy related or not? And a quick reminder, check us out online at alldaypigskin.com. Sign up for our newsletter to get these picks early. And also, if you guys want some fantasy help throughout the season, go ahead and get our VIP pass. All the details in the description. But in the meantime, if you guys enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe, and we'll see you in future videos.